a function called SUMIF. So SUMIF is a very important function in Excel. So what it does basically, it sums the number of values in a range based out of a certain condition or a criteria. Okay, so let me just show you a pictorial presentation here. So if you can see, SUMIF is made out of two conditions, basically two things. First is the sum function and the second is a condition. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to say here is SUMIF functions in Excel, it sum the values of cells based out of a certain condition. Okay, so parallelly we also have another function which you might have noticed, and that is SUMIF S. Now what's the difference between SUMIF and SUMIF S? We'll go on to the data to see the difference later on. So SUMIFs is nothing but, again, it is a combination of sum but based out of multiple conditions. So the only difference between the two functions is, first, SUMIF is only made out, is useful when we only have one condition. However, SUMIF is useful when we have more than one condition, multiple condition. Okay, you can have uh, I think to a count of 69 conditions, but I don't think you need that much. But yeah, also one more thing, the SUMIF function can also parallelly be used in place of SUMIF, because again, if you have one condition, again this will also work. So you can use SUMIF in place of SUMIF as well. But yeah, if you have more than one condition, uh, you have to use SUMIFs. Okay, now let us go to the data. So this is the data where we are having data about the number of sales, the sales of a vehicle, different vehicles, car, bus, truck, based out of different country. Okay, so what does, if I open the formula, so I'll say equal to sum. If I'll press tab, it will open up the dialog box for the formula. So if you see what it constitutes of, it constitutes of three things. First is a range, so this is the range. Okay, then you have a criteria, and then is another range where we have the values which need to be summed. Okay, just be mindful, the range, uh, which is the first attribute that needs to be entered here, is the same range where we have the criteria. Okay, so if you see the range and the criteria, those two things, this should be in one column. Okay, so this is for SUMIF. When we talk about SUMIFs, you're going to see there are multiple range like this, but the criteria should be in the same range which we are talking about. Okay, so in total it talks about, it has, if I talk about SUMIF, it has three parts in it. One is the range, second is the criteria, and third is the sum range. Okay, now you would have noticed that the sum range is in a square bracket. Okay, what, so what does it mean when it's in a square bracket? So basically, when attribute is in square bracket, it means it's an optional. So let me just tell you, when is the situation when it becomes optional. So it is optional when you have a range which is in form of numeric, and the sum can be done for that range itself. What do I mean to say is, for example, you have a range which has quite a few numbers, and you want to do a sum basis, and there are repetition of numbers here, and you want to do the sum basis one particular number. For example, if you see, we have a list of around 7 numbers. Okay, and there are a number of repetitions here. Okay, so if you want to do sum if here, so let me just put in front of you, I'll say sum if, I'll say tab, it will opens up the dialog box here. Okay, it talks about range, so I'll give the range here, control shift down. Okay, now the criteria. Now suppose I want to sum if, I want to sum the number 35, how many times 35 comes in that range. Okay, so I'll just say 35, I'll click on 35. Now I don't need to separately give a sum range because this itself is the range which will be summed. So I'll just close it and say enter. So it has summed up the number 35. How many times it is coming here? 2 times. So the result is 70. So this is the situation where the sum range and the range which has the criteria is 1. Okay. So we don't need to separately mention the sum range. Now this is different from the condition like the data that we have here. Here we would be summing up the sales for based on the number of vehicles and the country in which the sales have been done. Now you clearly see here the sales have is in present in a different column, and the country where the sale was done is present in a different column. The vehicle is also present in a different column. So here we cannot, the sum range is not an optional. Okay, we need to separately mention it. So let's start with a few case studies and I'll show you how we use the formula. Okay, so firstly I want to do the sum of vehicle, that is car, and I want to do irrespective of which country it was done. So I do want to get the total number of sales of car. Okay, so how do I do it? I'll put equal to SUMIF. I'll say tab. It opens up the dialog box wherein we start using the formula. Okay, so we see the first parameter, that is the range. So this is the same range where I can see the criteria car is present. So just be mindful that you are selecting the range where you see the criteria is available. So I cannot select this particular range because I don't see the car available here. I can only select the range where the car is available. So I can see this particular column, it has the value car in it. Okay, so I'll select this, control shift down. I'll select the criteria. I'll put comma. The second attribute is criteria. So I'll select the criteria as car. I can select it from here or anywhere it's written on the sheet, or I can even select it from the range itself. Okay. Then I have to select the sum range, which tells about the number of items which need to be sold. Control shift down, I'll select the range, I'll close and I'll say enter. So 976. So this is the number of cars that were sold in all the countries. If you want to just cross check, I'll just select car in all the countries just to see, and if you see here 976, so it's matching with what the formula has given us. Okay, now quickly let us take another example. Now we try to do the number of sales for the country India irrespective of what vehicle it has. Okay, I'll just start. I'll say SUMIF. I'll open it, it will open up the formula box. Now again, the first we have to select the range. Now see the range, now it has to be the range which has the value India in it. Now we cannot select this range because it does not have India in it. Okay, so we need to select the range which has India in it. So this is the range. So I'll do control shift down. Now criteria. So the criteria is India that we're trying to sum here, and then the sum range. So this is again the sum range that we're trying to sum. We'll close, and this is the value of all the sales done in India. Okay, if you want to manually cross check, if I just sum here 1630. Okay, this is how we will be summing up all the same sales that are done in India. Okay, now you see we have kind of manually operated entered the attributes here in the formula. There is another parallel way wherein we can use the formula bar, where we can use the insert function to enter this formula. Okay, so what I do here, I'll just double click this. So this is a formula builder. I can just drag it here. I can use, so you can see it's gives you a list of all the formulas here. I'll just double click on this SUMIF. Okay, now you can see it has opened up the same uh, attribute list but in a different view form. Okay, and you can similarly apply the formula here. So if I try to work on this particular case study, it's first talk about the range. Now again we have to select the range where we have the criteria, so we will be selecting this range. Okay, so this is the range criteria. Again I'll select criteria India, sum range. I'll select the sum range. This is the sum range, and I'll simply do done. Okay, I'll close this, and now you can see you have a similar result. So this is basically another way how you can use the formula. Either you can manually open the formula box and select the range and the criteria by yourself, or you can use the formula builder function in the Excel to do it. Okay. Now moving on, we have a wildcard condition. So when you talk about the criteria, there can be any number of any criteria that can be used in some. It can be a text, it can be a date, it can be any logical uh, kind of function, any logical explanation. Okay, so if you see this wildcard A, so what does this wildcard A does? So wildcard A, what it will do, it will sum up all the it will sum up all the criterias wherein the last letter of the criteria is A, and in front of it there can be any number of letters, any number of characters. Okay, so if I try to work on this particular condition, let me just say SUMIF. I'll open up the range. When I select, for example, I'm just looking to sum basically the country, the sales in the country basically which ends with the letter A. So I'll select this particular column. Okay, criteria. So when I say criteria, I'll double quote it. I'll say wildcard A, again double quote it, and then give the sum range. So this is the sum range, and I'll close it. I'll say enter. So you see 2709. So it would have definitely summed up all the countries which ends with letter A, and there can be any number of characters in the front. So if I just want to cross check it, I'll see, I'm just seeing India and Africa. These are the two countries which ends with letter A. So if I just try to sum up the sales for India and Africa, 2709. Okay, so this is what the wildcard A does when you try to put it in the criteria. There is another wildcard that I can talk about is question mark. So what is the difference between the wildcard A and the question mark? So question mark again is just uh, it talks about uh, uh, the letter which ends but only one letter in front of it. Okay, so when you talk about the wildcard A, there can be any number of letter in front of A. But if I talk about the wildcard question mark, if I say question mark A, okay, so it will only see the criterias where there is only one letter in front of A. Okay, so since we don't have any particular country which only has one letter in front of A, so we will not be able to sum it. But this is just a use case which I wanted to mention here. Okay, now let's move on. As I talked in the beginning of the video, there is a parallel function called SUMIFS. So SUMIFS is basically a advanced modification of the function, and it was launched in 2007 by Microsoft Excel. Okay, so this was basically when we wanted to sum a particular values in the range based out of multiple criterias. Okay, so if I just show you, just give you a glimpse of the formula and say sum if, and I'll say sum if s, I'll select it. Now here you can say the sum range is the first attribute. Then you have criteria range 1, criteria 1. Okay, now the sum range now has come to the first as a first attribute, because uh, you don't know how many criterias it will be there, so it has brought the sum range as a first attribute. Then you have criteria range 1, criteria 1, then you have criteria range 2, criteria 2. So basically what it does, first is the sum range. Okay, then we have the range for criteria, criteria range, and then you have the criteria. So this will keep on repeating: criteria range 1, criteria 1, criteria range 2, criteria 2. This will keep on repeating for as many criterias and range you have. And the sum range, of course, is the values that you need to sum. So let us see in the data that we have here. The case study that I'm trying to do is basically I'm trying to sum up. I'll try to sum basically the vehicle basis the vehicle car and the country India. So basically I'm trying to sum the number of sales for the vehicle car and the country India here. Okay, now you see we have two conditions here. We need to sum the sales basis the vehicle car and the country India. So it's multiple condition and both are available in different columns. Okay, so we'll not be able to achieve this with SUMIF, so we'll have to use SUMIF as here. Okay, how do we do it? I'll say SUMIFs. I'll say open tab. Okay, now here the first thing that we need to select is the range. So this is the sum range. So basically the sum sales column, because the sales is something which we are planning to sum. Control shift down. I'll select the same the sales range here. Okay, now it talks about criteria range 1. So what is the first criteria? The first criteria is the vehicle car. I'll put comma. I'll see which column, which range consists of car. So this is this column vehicle which consists of car. So I'll select this range. So this is criteria range 1. Then you have to select the criteria 1. Now, as of now, it is working the way SUMIF was working. Okay, so I'll have to select criteria 1. So what is the criteria? The criteria is car. I can select from here. Okay, or I can even select from anywhere the word car is written. Okay, now this is now till now you covered the first range and the first criteria. Now we move on to criteria range 2. What is the criteria? Second criteria is the country. So we need to go to the column which has the country. So this is the column. I'll select this range, and I'll also select the criteria in the country column which we are trying to sum based on that. Okay, so India is the criteria which I am trying to sum the sales of. So now we have covered both. Now you can see I've taken the criteria range 1 and the criteria. I've taken the criteria range 2 and the criteria, and this is the sum range. Okay, I'll close the bracket. I'll say enter 276. You can manually check here. For India, 276 cars were sold. Basically the sales were 276. Okay, so this is how sum if with multiple conditions will work. Okay, now also so this is only when you have two conditions in different ranges. Basically you have one condition, you have condition car in this range, and you have condition India in this range. So what happens if you're trying to sum with multiple conditions in the same range? For example, you want to know the sales of vehicles for US and India. Okay, you want to know the same, you want to check the sales basically for these two countries irrespective of the vehicle here. Okay, so how do we do it? So I'll just write here sum if. Okay, I'll select the range here. This is the range. So when it comes about the criteria, I'll just select US. I'll drag down to India as well. So you can see it has taken both US and India. Now I can just, so basically this sum sale, this is the sum range. Okay. I'll just select again. Okay, sum range. We'll just do sum if here because we are just trying to talk about multiple condition, but that is just in one column. Okay, so I'll just select range here. So this is the range. As I just mentioned, the range should have the criteria within it. So this is the range. Okay, I'll just select criteria. We said we're gonna take two criterias, so US and India together, and we're gonna take the sales range. We're gonna close the formula. Now what you see, it has given the sum for both India and US in different cells. Okay, if you see for India, it has given the sales 1630, and US it has given the sales 1511. Okay, but if we want to have this in one column, just simply put a sum function here outside the SUMIF function. It will, I'll put a tab. It has opened up the function, and now it has the attribute number 1, number 2. You can just, since we always already have the value inside the function, we're going to put the bracket at the end, close the formula, and it has totaled up the values of both the SUMIFs. Okay, now again, if you want to, so this was the case when the US and India, we had it one above the other. Okay, what if we have one condition here and one condition, for example, Africa? How do we do it? Simply you can just select US, Africa, and maybe Japan as well, just to show you. You can just copy, and I was already doing it here. You can just select here. So it is basically just a workaround. You have created these conditions together just to select it. Now you'll do SUMIF, open. So you talk about the range where the criterias are. So this is the range where the criterias are, comma, what is the criteria? I'll select these three as the criterias. Sum range, this is the sum range. I'll close, and now again, if you see, it has given the sales of different countries in all the three columns. So you can again do a sum in front of this formula. You can close this formula, say enter 4070. So this is basically, if you talk the sum of sales for India, Africa, and Japan, you can manually check it. Okay, US, Africa, and Japan. So basically, if I talk here, let me just show you by putting filter. US, Africa, and Japan. Okay, so if I sum here 4070, okay, I'll release the filter here. So this is how you can sum for multiple criterias within one range. Now remember, we have not used sum ifs here because the range was 1. We did not had many range. The sum ifs is only applicable when you have multiple criterias which are present in multiple range. Okay, for example, one criteria is available in this range and one criteria is available in this range. So then in that case, sum if s will work. But this was just a case wherein we only had one range, that is the country, but I had multiple criteria in this range. Okay, so if you see here, the criteria. If I click on the criteria, it is showing up United States, Africa, and Japan. So it is taking the criteria in form of an array. Okay, so this is basically all about SUMIF, how you can use SUMIF, how you can use SUMIFS, what is the difference between the two, few use cases which are here. Okay, and how you can do using manually the formula dialog box, how you can use the insert function to use SUMIF. Okay, now similarly there are other functions like AVERAGEIF, COUNTIF, min, max. All these also operate on a similar model. However, I'm going to make a different video for all these as well. For now, I'm just focusing on SUMIF. So this is the complete tutorial. I hope it was helpful for you, and we're going to see you in the next video. Thank you.